Most people think of Adolf Hitler as a figure who simply materialized as a monster. But the most chilling fact is that he was democratically invited into the halls of power after a failed coup and a stint in prison. He didn't just seize Germany. He convinced a nation to dismantle its own democracy from the inside.
So he wasn't always the supreme dictator. There was a version of Hitler that was just a guy in a jail cell writing a book that nobody thought would actually matter.
Exactly. And today we're looking at how that trajectory led to the deadliest conflict in human history and the systematic murder of millions. This isn't just a biography, it's a study of how a modern state can be hijacked by hatred. Hitler wasn't even German by birth. He was born in Austria-Hungary in 1889 and only moved to Germany in 1913. When World War I broke out, he served in the German army and actually received the Iron Cross for bravery.
Wait, so he was a war hero? That's a weird starting point for a genocidal dictator.
It gave him a sense of purpose he lacked before. When Germany lost the war, he felt betrayed, like the country had been stabbed in the back. This resentment brought him to a tiny political group in 1919 called the German Workers' Party.
I'm guessing that's the precursor to the Nazis?
It was. Hitler had a gift for oratory. He could mesmerize a crowd with his rage. He took over the party in 1921, but in 1923 he got impatient. He tried to overthrow the government in Munich in what's known as the Beer Hall Putsch. It was a total disaster.
So he goes to prison. Why didn't that just end the story right there?
Because the court was sympathetic. He was sentenced to 5 years, but only served about 1. In his cell, he dictated Mein Kampf, laying out his vision of living space for Germans and his virulent conspiracy-driven anti-Semitism. He realized he couldn't win by force alone. He had to use the system against itself. Fast forward to the early 1930s. Germany is reeling from the Great Depression. Hitler uses propaganda to blame Jewish people and communists for every problem the country has. By 1932, the Nazi Party is the largest in the legislature, but Hitler still isn't in charge.
So how does he cross the finish line? Is there some secret election?
No, it was backroom politics. Conservative leaders like Franz von Papen thought they could tame Hitler if they brought him into the government. They convinced President Hindenburg to appoint Hitler as chancellor in January 1933.
Narrator voice. They could not, in fact, tame him.
Not at all. Within months, the Reichstag passed the Enabling Act, giving Hitler the power to make laws without the legislature. When Hindenburg died in 1934, Hitler merged the offices of president and chancellor. He became the Führer. Germany was officially a totalitarian state.
And then he starts moving on the rest of the world, right? Because his whole living space idea required land.
Precisely. First, he rebuilds the military, defying international treaties. Then he starts annexing territory. Austria, parts of Czechoslovakia. The world watches, hoping he'll stop, but on September 1st, 1939, he invades Poland. That's the spark. Britain and France declare war, and the nightmare of World War II begins.
While he's fighting this global war, he's also running the Holocaust. How was he managing both?
He was obsessed with both. He directed military operations personally, often ignoring his generals. At the same time, he spearheaded the final solution, a state-sponsored machinery of death. He and the Nazis murdered 6 million Jews and millions of others they deemed subhuman. It wasn't a side effect of the war, it was a core goal of his regime.
But the tide eventually turns. You can't fight the whole world forever.
It turns hard. After he invades the Soviet Union in 1941 and declares war on the US, the Axis powers start losing ground. By 1945, the Soviet Red Army is literally knocking on his door in Berlin. On April 30th, 1945, hiding in an underground bunker, Hitler commits suicide. He married his longtime partner, Eva Braun, just the day before, and they both ended their lives to avoid capture.
It's hard to wrap your head around the scale of this. What's the final tally on the damage he caused?
It's staggering. Under his leadership, the Nazis were responsible for the deaths of an estimated 19.3 million civilians and prisoners of war. If you count the soldiers and civilians killed in the military conflict he started, you're looking at nearly 50 million deaths in Europe alone.
Is that why historians call him the embodiment of modern political evil? It's not just the numbers, it's the intent.
Exactly. He proved that a modern, educated society could be transformed into a vehicle for genocide through the use of charisma, propaganda, and organized hatred. His legacy is the reason the world now has international laws regarding human rights and war crimes. We study him because we have to recognize the warning signs of how a democracy can die.
What's the one thing to remember about Adolf Hitler?
Remember that he didn't seize power by force, but by exploiting the grievances and fears of a democratic society to dismantle it from within.
That's Wikipodia, every story on demand. Search your next topic at wikipedia.ai.